Welcome to SysEng Quick. My name is John, and today I'll show you how to build Ansible roles. Roles facilitate the grouping of tasks and other related items into reusable components. They make your playbooks easier to read and maintain. If you had to deploy a web application, you might need to install a web server, configure it, start the service, update the firewall, and copy your application files. That's a lot harder to understand than run the role that deploys the web application. There might even be an existing role that configures the web server. There's a lot to gain when using Ansible roles. Let's modify our NeoFetch playbook and move our task into a role. In the collection directory, there's a folder named Roles. Each folder we create inside here will be a role. Let's move into that directory. On the terminal, I'm going to go ahead and go cd collections, Ansible collections, SysEng Quick, tutorial, roles. We can create a skeleton role with Ansible-Galaxy, role init, and the name of our role, which I'm going to call NeoFetch. I don't normally use Ansible Galaxy to initialize roles because the metadata isn't as important when the role is inside a collection. But the structure predates Ansible collections, and it's still nice to have some idea of the structure of a role folder, even though most of the files it creates are basically empty. Let's take a look at what Ansible Galaxy created for us. In our NeoFetch directory, it made a lot of stuff. Most of these I'm not going to cover right now. I'd like to cover them as the topic comes up organically. So let's focus on just two of these things right now, meta and tasks. Like I said before, meta isn't that important because we're publishing this inside, or we're creating this role inside a collection. But let's go ahead and fix it anyway. So I'll put this as my name, and the role description is going to be install NeoFetch. Company, I don't have one, so I'll comment that out. License, we'll move that to GPL 3.0 or later to match what we put on the collection. The Ansible version, it's 2.1. That's how you can tell how old this is. And this has to be a string, not a number, so we'll quote that. We'll just say 2.16. And I think that's everything we need, even though we don't need any of this really. Okay, no more errors on that file, so let's go ahead and get out of that. The important folder is the task folder. This is where you put your task files for the NeoFetch role. And the default task file is main.yaml. So if you don't tell it to use task from a different file, it will use the task in this file. So let's go ahead back to our playbook, and let's simply move all of our tasks into this file. Go ahead and cut this and paste it, and then let's dedent this properly. There we go. That all looks fine. We'll go back to our NeoFetch playbook. So how are we going to use our new role? Well, let's go to our task and give it a new task. The name is going to be run NeoFetch role, and let's do import role. And the name of our role is sysengquick.tutorial.neofetch. And let's see if that works. Let's go to our terminal and we'll run Ansible-playbook sysengquick.tutorial.neofetch. Does this still work? Yeah, everything seems to be fine. Now that we've shown everything still works, did we get any actual improvement? Well, it's marginal, but yes. It's easier to understand importing this single role than these three individual tasks. And if we wanted to run this NeoFetch role in some other playbook, I can simply copy this rather than copying all of those tasks. So there is a benefit for reusability, even though in this particular example, the benefit is rather small. Let's see if we can increase the benefit somewhat. Let's add some more task files. I'm going to add one called install-txt capital D Debian.yml, and a second one called install-capital R capital H Red Hat.yml. And let's go back and take the Debian task and place it inside the install Debian.yaml file. I'm also going to remove this when condition. Same thing over here for Red Hat. Let's cut that and move that over into the Red Hat file. Again, removing the when condition. And now we will import this task file in a similar way that we imported the role. So to do that, we'll do name, our task, and we'll say install neofetch. And now I'm going to import tasks. I'm give it the file of install dash, and here I'm going to use a Jinja expression. When you have a quoted string, you can add these double open and closed curly braces to print an Ansible variable. So let's print the Ansible OS family variable. So let's do Ansible facts.os_family, and then after the closing curly brace, we'll add .yml. Let's go ahead and save this and see if this works. We'll go ahead and rerun the playbook, and it does not. There is a limitation of import task and import roles. Everything has to be known when you run the playbook, and this variable is not known until we are running the playbook, not when we start running the playbook. However, there is a workaround. We can use a variable here if we change this import task to include task instead. This is a dynamic include versus the static import that we were using before. So now we won't even evaluate this until Ansible comes across the task in our task file. So we can save this, and let's try running it again. And now you can see it doesn't fail. And here, rather than skipping it on the Red Hat or Debian systems, it simply ran this where it included neofetch in both places, but it included the Debian one on one host and the Red Hat one on the other host. And we only ran the task once for each one. So now we're no longer skipping them. Is this better? Debatable, but I think it's a little bit cleaner than the other way. Let's make our task files a little bit better. When we did install Debian and install Red Hat, at first I had this update cache being true because I needed to update the cache. However, we don't every time. So why don't we only update the cache if we need to do that? Let's add another task which updates the cache. So for Debian, we'll say update package cache. We're going to run apt again. This time we're going to supply two parameters. Update cache will be true, and cache valid time will be 3600. In other words, we will update the cache if it's more than an hour old. Otherwise, we won't. And here, we won't have to do that anymore. We'll go ahead and save that file. And in Red Hat, we'll do something very similar. Basically, it's going to be almost identical. Let's go ahead and copy this, add it over here. Rather than apt, we're going to use DNF, and there is no cache valid time in the DNF module. So this will update the cache if it's out of date. I don't quite know when DNF considers the cache out of date, but somehow it knows. Let's go ahead and see if that still runs. We'll run the playbook. And there we go. Everything ran. And we ran both tasks on the appropriate host. So yeah, everything looks to be running properly. I want to show you one more thing before we go. In the video I did about facts, I told you if you wanted to supply properties to the setup module, you had to run it in a task. That's not entirely true. We can use gather subset from gather facts inside the play. So if we comment this out and then copy this over, let's see how that might work. We can go ahead and copy this. I'll uncomment it, and then we'll dedent that, and we'll change gather facts to true. Let's go ahead and save that, and we'll save this file over here, and let's rerun the playbook. And you can see things work every bit as much as they did before. So this is an alternative. However, I don't like this in most circumstances. But for this play specifically, if I do it this way, I have to remember that this role needs the OS family fact, and I might not remember that. If I don't gather facts, the play might just fail to run. So I think it's better to simply keep this here where it was, but I want to show you that other options were possible, because I did misspeak in the facts video. So although we are placing this back, just FYI, I guess. I think that covers the basics of Ansible roles. I know there was a lot we didn't get to yet, but I'm sure we'll touch upon these things in a future video. I also know the differences between import and include can be very subtle and confusing, but it just takes time to learn the differences. And even then, you'll probably still be confused. I know I often am. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, go hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.